Comparison price for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And as always, this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. Big show planned for you as the Vancouver Canucks make their way to Southern California for this double dip back-to-back with the Los Angeles Kings and the Anaheim Ducks. Talked about it yesterday. Both of these teams in the Canucks orbit right now. Ducks playing good hockey. Of course, Kings, one of the teams they're chasing in the NHL's Western Conference playoff race. But we'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. What should the Canucks do with Brock Boeser? You can vote, re-sign him. You can vote trade him. You can vote keep him through the playoffs, which is our way of saying own rental, a phrase that is getting more and more commonplace in the discussion around Brock Boeser. Do so at the Sekeres Price X and YouTube channels.
Barring a real surge here, like basically winning out until the trade deadline.
Winning the last four before the deadline.
Keeping him through the playoffs would seem poor asset management. Mm-hmm. Generally, that's a phrase you hear from a team solidly in the playoffs that just doesn't know what else to do with a contributing player on their roster that's headed towards UFA status.
Like a team like Carolina acquiring a player like Mikko Rantanen, right? Like they're trying to win a championship.
Yeah.
So,
while it would hurt if he walked, winning a Stanley Cup would feel pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. So they're going to take their chances on that. Canucks are not in that. They're barely into the playoffs here. No one is expecting them to do anything when they get there. So to me, it's really a question of re-sign him or trade him. Mm-hmm. And re-signing him to a team-friendly deal just seems really unlikely because you know that the player has got a pretty decent leg to stand in. All he has to do is point to last season. Mm-hmm. And, if he can get 2 goals before the trade deadline, he's going to have 20 goals at the trade deadline, which isn't terrible either. He still has an outside chance of being a 30-goal scorer here this season. A better than outside chance. A decent chance of being a 30-goal scorer if he gets moderately warm. So, all this is to say, I think I'm voting trade him. And until you've seen the market, you can't say that definitively, but that's where I'd be leaning right now.
Yeah, I appreciate the notion of own rental. You get the cap space in the summer to spend. So while you can argue it's bad asset management, and I think it's that, you do walk away with something from it. You get a chance to keep the player through a playoff push.
And the winger market's good.
And maybe even a postseason run. And we should also note that Brock has been a terrific postseason performer in his career. He was a point-per-game player last year for the Vancouver Canucks over 12 games. Of course, you remember he missed that final playoff game against Edmonton with the blood clotting issues. Mm-hmm. But he had 7 goals in 12 games last year in their 2-round playoff run. He was also 11 points in 17 games in the bubble playoff run of 2020. Many take that with a grain of salt, say it wasn't really the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it's some time ago now, but all told, 23 points, 11 goals in 29 playoff games. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. In terms of re-signing him, mm-hmm. If I felt Boeser would accept a 5 or even a 6-year deal, I would be inclined to do that if I'm the Vancouver Canucks.
5, yes.
Wouldn't want to go to 6, but depending on what the AAV is and if he would work with me on the trade protection, I would at least consider 6. But 7 or 8 are absolutely no-goes for me. We're talking about a player who struggles with pace to begin with. What's Pace going to look at age 35, 36? So it's a general rule for me. You want to be out of the player before age 35. But I think it's even more pronounced with Brock. The problem with re-signing, AFP analytics, and they're not always bullseye,
no,
but they're certainly neighborhood ballpark. Mm-hmm. AFP analytics is projecting Boeser, and this is with the cap going up a significant jump this year and then expected big jumps in the 2 years thereafter, projecting a 7-year, $9.3 million average annual value for Boeser. That's $65 million total dollars. So think about it. To get there on a 5 or a 6 year deal, you're looking at making him a $10+ million player.
Mm-hmm.
That may be difficult to swallow. As for a trade, well, we're going to get into that over the course of the program here. First, let me tell you about our friends at Surrey Mitsubishi who want to get EP40 back on top. Everyone at the dealership and beyond rallying behind him. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 on a new or used vehicle. If he gets 2 points, that's right, $1,000 savings. If he gets 5 points, dare to dream, a 5-point breakout, $2,500 on a new or used vehicle. You got to mention Harrison Price, and that offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey. As we get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Well, happy birthday, Brock Boeser. 28 years old today. He is the longest-serving Vancouver Canuck. Thatcher Demco was drafted a year before him, but Boeser made the NHL sooner. He's number 21 on the new trade board put together by The Athletic and Chris Johnston. And, of course, trade him, keep him, let him walk in free agency. Boeser spoke to Ben Kuzma of the province earlier this week. Quote, obviously, I'd love to re-sign, but if that's not the case, go to UFA and I'll be just fine. That's made me less stressed. So good to hear that Brock has found coping mechanisms here with all the uncertainty. And for many who have said, and these calls grew even louder last week when the Canucks re-signed Kevin Lankinen. You know, they have said we're still evaluating Boeser. I mean, Marcus Pettersson was here a minute. You re-signed him.
Drew O'Connor
was here 2 minutes. You re-signed him. Kevin Lankinen was here 4 minutes. You re-signed him. So all the money that they have committed to extending players, some of them brand new, of course, makes life a little bit more difficult next year in terms of getting Brock Boeser back in the fold while also addressing and improving other areas of the hockey club, namely a top 2 center.
The birthday thing is an important thing. He's young for UFA. He played most of this season as a 27-year-old. So if you go through the exercise, if you sign him to a 6-year deal, year one is as a 28-year-old by extension. So 28, 29.
Kind of like Jake DeBrusk last year where he was a young UFA. Folks, you almost never see a UFA younger than 27 in the National Hockey League.
So a 6-year deal, that last year, he's playing on most of that year as a 33-year-old, which, it's older. You don't love 33-year-old wingers, but it's doable. Mm-hmm. Like those guys often still get another contract after that.
Yep.
I still think it's a risk that this management group does not really want to take given his foot speed.
Yep.
And I think that's
I get it
here.
Because, and I've heard this, and it's fair, is Boeser the ideal winger in Rick Tocchet's system? Probably not. Now, he scored 40 goals last year. It's not like he wasn't a fit. Not everyone needs to be a speedy forechecking puck hound. You do need some guys to actually finish those chances. Mm-hmm. Once you retrieve the puck. But yeah, I can understand the Vancouver Canucks having a number of qualms, even forecasting beyond a Rick Tocchet coach team on the Boeser side of things. Here's our friend Irf Gaffar of Rinkwide. They've had a number of chances to re-sign him, and you still evaluating as a reason for not. It's pretty simple. Brock likely wants term, 7-8 years, and the Canucks aren't willing to do that. He'll get it and get paid what he wants somewhere else if things don't change. Now, as Kuz brought up in his piece, one of the comparable contracts for Brock Boeser is Philadelphia Flyers forward Travis Konechny. Konechny signed a 8-year, $70 million U.S. extension in July. That contract takes effect next year. So this contract came in even before the formalized jump in the cap for next year. Now, I think the Flyers and a lot of other NHL teams were operating on the principle that the cap was going to go up and go up significantly. We knew that pretty much last year. But he got 8 years, $70 million. It's an $8.75 million cap hit, and he got a no movement clause in the first 6 years of the deal. Now, you can say that Travis Konechny is a better player than Brock Boeser. He has 62 points this year to Boeser's 35. Last year, he had 68 to Boeser's 73. Now, he made the Canadian team for the Four Nations. Brock fell shy of the American team. You can argue that Konechny is a better player. Fair enough. But I don't think that Ben Hankinson is going to have too much trouble arguing that Brock Boeser is a comparable contract to Konechny, whether that's with the Vancouver Canucks or another team.
Last year's contract is going to be the belle of the ball for these negotiations, right? It's constantly going to be a point backwards to that, saying that's the ceiling. When Konechny scored 40 goals and had over 75 points, let us know. And it might happen this year, but until it's happened, it hasn't. But it's a Konechny's $8.75 million cap hit. You could argue if he ends up having this transcendent season this year, that ends up looking like a pretty decent deal in the new cap world.
And they're roughly the same age because Konechny's turning 28 here in a couple of weeks.
And I'm not even saying this in terms of a trade.
In fact, they were taken with consecutive picks in the 2015 draft.
Nick Ehlers just turned 29. He's 1 year older than Brock Boeser. He's a UFA to be as well. And you wonder, would they rather a guy? I'm not saying the Canucks have a chance of getting Ehlers either via trade or in the summer. Mm-hmm. But would it, like, if you just blinked and made Brock Boeser play exactly like Nikolai Ehlers, are the Canucks a little bit more eager to sign him given the foot speed? Given the ability to make other players around him better with the assists? Like Ehlers is a better distributor.
And that's the other thing, and I see that from Canucks fans. In fact, I've got somebody in my mentions already today on this, and that is that Brock is reliant on a good center iceman like a JT Miller to get him the puck.
Yeah.
That he's not an individual offensive creator or driver, if you will, that he's more finisher than playmaker. Now, in some regard, I think that's a little unfair because this is a smart – hockey IQ is not a problem here. Brock's a smart hockey player. In fact, that's how he gets by defensively a lot, is understanding positioning and reading the play. And he's – in short areas, he can get others the puck. But, yes, I understand he's not a guy that's going to have the puck on his stick, go for a romp in the offensive zone, draw defenders, create, and dish all that often. To your question, now, Ehlers has never had a 70-point season. In fact, 64 is his high water mark. Nor has he ever crested 30 goals. 29 is his high water mark. But, yeah, if you want to talk about pace and the player's offensive game aging a little better and the Canucks potentially being more comfortable with that, I can understand that. The other thing on Ehlers, Blake, 14 points in 37 playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
4 goals. When the stakes have picked up, he's stepped down.
Boeser, 23 points in 29 playoff games, 11 goals in 29 playoff games. Now, that's only over 2 campaigns, mind you.
Right.
He's only been healthy for two Canucks.
Ehlers been in the playoffs 6 times. There's been a lot of losing there.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was 7 points in his first 15 playoff games. It has been a paltry 7 in his last 22.
I mean, if the Canucks were to trade Brock Boeser, I think, honestly, pointing to the playoff contributions might be the best thing. I mean, that is the kind of rental player that you want. The guy that has, in fact, upped his production rate for the postseason, not seen it go down.
And Konechny hasn't exactly been a great playoff performer either while we're at it. 22 games, 8 points, just the one goal for Konechny in 22 Stanley Cup playoff games. So I'm 5 and 6, depending on if he would work with me on the number and the trade protection. What's the longest you're willing to go? Is it 5? You're rooting?
I mean, if the cap hit was extraordinarily low, I would consider 6. But no, I think I'd feel more far. I'm really frightened about his skating 5 years from now.
Okay. So play it out with me. Again, 9.3 times 7, the AFP analytics projection gets you to $65 million. Would you do 6 years at $10 million? That's $60 million total.
No.
Okay.
Can't.
So then you're not even considering 5 at $12 million.
Nope.
Okay. Let me ask you this then, GM Price. You're struggling to score goals right now. You're a weaker offensive outfit after the Miller trade. What's the plan to score goals if you let him walk? It's on the market for Nikolai Ehlers and what he's going to cost you?
The winger market's pretty decent for the summer.
Let's go through some of the names then. Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen are the big ones.
Yep.
Zucker, Palmieri. If you want to look at hybrid guys, is Duchesne a winger going forward? Michael Granlund a winger going forward? Does Brad Marchand even enter the conversation here? 36 years old, too old. Do you want to look at John Tavares? Or
I don't think John Tavares looks anywhere else. I think he's offering hometown discounts, and he's staying where he is. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Victoria's Jamie Benn at 35, 36 years old.
I think you've got a better chance of taking whatever $10 million you're planning on spending on Brock Boeser and creating more space and going after a guy like Mitch Marner, who's more likely to.
Wow, I thought you were going to come at me and say, go get a couple of players, go get Sam Bennett and somebody else, and maybe by committee.
No, sure. If you want to solve the center issue by going after Sam Bennett, by all means, sure, do that as well.
So let me ask you this. Do you feel compelled to trade him in terms of your search for a top 2 center? You look at the prospect pool right now, it's Jonathan Lekkerimäki, winger. It's Tom Wielander, defenseman. Now, there may well be some other guys who surprise us. Elias Pettersson is looking good on defense right now. But you have really those 2 guys. They're the only 2 guys who make the top 50, top 75, top 100 prospect lists. And you got your first-round pick this year. We'll talk to Cam Robinson a little bit later. But spoiler alert, he thinks you can get a first-round pick and a pretty good prospect for Boeser at the deadline, given he's a goal scorer, given his playoff history. And really, even at $6.6 million, in other worlds, that would have been a very difficult salary to. But the Canucks are awash in cap space. They can take bad money back to help facilitate or hold if that's.
But even like for $6 million winger is not crazy money either.
No. So you're looking to get that first or second line center. And let's face it, first line is probably going to be too much, but a second line center. You add another top 75, top 100 prospect, another first round pick. That gives you 5 pretty good young assets going into the draft to peddle if you think there's a number 1 or number 2 center iceman available. How does that strike you?
And try to get that via trade at the draft or draft the player? You mean?
Via trade. I mean, if you're drafting the guy, he's still years out. I mean, you're looking to compete next year with Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demco perhaps on the final year of his deal. And look, I understand it all pivots on Elias and whether or not he can get back to being the sort of player that we remember.
You'd have
so
to show
let's
me.
just set that on the shelf for a second and say Elias is going to be back, because needless to say, an Elias Pettersson trade changes the entirety of this equation.
You'd have to show me the player that they're chasing for me to really know if that's a path going down.
You just did some digging on Marco Rossi.
Well, Sanj on Twitter just got back to us on the poll question and said, Boeser to the Wild for a package involving Rossi, do whatever it takes, even if it means retaining some salary. More likely, Sanj, is it would be Boeser and a package for Rossi, given that Rossi's on a point per game. Rossi's interesting. He would not be my first choice as a top 6 center for this team, but given what's available out there, he's a very skilled player, but he's 5'9", and there's a lot of GMs, and I think Bill Guerin would be on my list of GMs that would probably have a bias against that. So I think
he did draft Rossi. He preceded the draft, and of course our old friend Judd Brackett, former Canucks director of amateur scouting, is there in Minnesota running their drafts and has done excellent work for the Wild, much like he did for the Canucks. But Rossi, 49 points in 57 games on an entry-level deal, everybody.
Which expires this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's going to get more expensive, but he's...
he
doesn't have arb rights, so it's not like AFP is projecting there, if they do a longer-term deal, 6 by 6.7, or a bridge deal of 2 years at 4.6. So he's going to get more expensive, but there's still going to be good contract value in this player going forward. He doesn't have arb rights, so he can't really force the matter just yet with the Minnesota Wild.
Does Boeser and Ratu get it done, or do you have to go Boeser, Ratu in a first?
Well, I'm not sure I would want to move another centerman in this deal. I mean, you want as many cracks at center ice as you can get.
But the Wild would, all of a sudden, they get a bit of a hole there, too. Like guys like Huzendinov and stuff have not panned out the way they wanted to. So you'd be down to Eriksson, Ek, and Hartman as your top 2 centers there.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Well, yeah.
They've got a ton of guys who can play
They
center.
got Prince George's Riley Height, who may well be a thing as well. Just let me look at the reserve list as well. Not a ton there at center. Oh, Stramel, the first-round pick, was kind of a reach in 2023, but he might be a center. No, you're quite right. Minnesota would be making the calculation that they re-sign Boeser first and foremost, improve even more so on the wing.
Have a cheap Ratu to wean into the NHL next year.
Well, put it this way. Boeser in a first, especially a first this year with a draft that looks a little weaker.
I would do that.
That's
sure.
something I would do.
Yeah.
If they ask for a third piece, I would like it not to be a center iceman, but we'll see.
I'm guessing that's what it would be.
Well, someone in the Melvin Fernstrom neighborhood, winger defenseman, is something I might be more inclined.
Others are trying to get Minnesota to take Susie back in that deal as well, and then it becomes a massive. Then it becomes a massive trade, taking multiple NHL players off the Canucks roster. But
Susie, of course, once upon a time in Minnesota.
Yeah, history there.
And playoff-style defenseman, did well last year, as the Canucks were, for the most part, able to shut down and mitigate Connor McDavid and the Oilers and the Nashville Predators, at least at 5-on-5. What's going on at Yellow Dog?
Well, the fine folks at Yellow Dog have got a great West Coast IPA in the neighborhood umbrella. It's called the Good Times West Coast IPA. Anywhere you bring it, immediately, good times. It's a bold, crisp, and delicious brew made with Simcoe, Citra, and Mosaic hops, giving it that big tropical citrus and pine note on it. So go check it out from Neighborhood Brewing. It's the Good Times West Coast IPA.
All right. So even with Brock Boeser in the lineup, the Canucks need goals, damn it. Scored 2 on the weekend. I saw that tweet. The Whitecaps doubled them up in just one game. When you're scoring less than a soccer team. Canucks need goals. Talked about a little bit with J-Pat yesterday. Connor Garland, Kiefer Sherwood, others who are in slumps here. Got a score against LA and against Anaheim. And our friends at Canucks Conversation, David Quadrelli, Harmon Dial, they were talking about this. Was it yesterday or the other day, Mike? Anyways, wanted to play this because Harm is taking a stand here. And it's with our old friend Nils Höglander. Take a listen.
Got to give Nils Höglander a turn in the top six. You're relying on O'Connor and Sherwood in regular top six spots. Nobody's creating offense. I mentioned Connor Garland has 4 points in his last 17 games. You look at Höglander, and yes, the points haven't been there yet, but he's been buried on the fourth line. And you look at the last 30 games, he has the best offensive analytics among the team's forwards. When Höglander's been on the ice, the last 30 games, the Canucks have generated 26 shots on goal per 60 and 2.71 expected goals per 60. That is by far the best rate on the team among forwards. Their actual goals for rate too. So don't come at me with these shots, chances, whatever. 2.65 goals for per 60. Actual goals is also team leading in the last 30 games. Canucks have outscored opponents 12-2 with Höglander on the ice at 5-on-5 in the last 30 games. I'm not saying he's a perfect option. Right, we know on a contending team, he wouldn't, even at his best, Höglander isn't a full-time top six guy. But relative to your other winger options, you got to give him a crack, in my opinion.
Yeah, don't disagree.
It may sound crazy for a guy who is sitting on 4 goals and 12 points in 53 games this year. But just to fuller expand on Harmon Dial's point, the Canucks have outscored their opposition 12-2 with Höglander on the ice 5-on-5 this year, and he did score 24 goals last year, and Elias, precious as he may be, does like playing with him. I think you absolutely... Canucks get going at practice here at 1 o'clock at the Kings Suburban Practice Facility in El Segundo, but I do think Harmon's got it right. You absolutely have to give Höglander another shot here.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not going to look like that when they do take to the ice for practice. But how many times, and goes back to coaches sort of outthinking themselves. I mean, how many times has Coach Rick Tocchet just gone on pedigree for his lines? Just dress you could go with all forwards. In this case, just wingers. Why don't you go with your top 4 pedigreed wingers, the guys that have cracked 25 goals in the NHL. So, put DeBrusk, Garland.
Well, Garland hasn't cracked 25, but I hear what you're
20.
Saying. Yeah.
DeBrusk, Garland, Boeser, and Höglander. The guys you have proof of concept with, They have done it in the league. Just put them there. When you're this starved for goals,
not the worst shot.
Should you just not go on what you've seen work before?
And then you got Joshua and Sherwood on your third line.
Not the end of the world.
Exactly.
No, I mean...
I hate agreeing with when you make great points like that, and I just have to sit here and go, yes, right you are, Blake Price. There's a little something inside me that burns, but nevertheless...
And you could argue, hey, Joshua...
I'm picking
Joshua's shown some proof of concept too, but we know this is a different
This is a
season.
Most different year for Dakota Joshua. I came across a tweet yesterday. 1 year ago yesterday, February 24th, the Vancouver Canucks had 82 points. It led the National Hockey League. They had achieved a 50% point share on yesterday, on February 24th last year. They still had 22 games remaining
to get sugar.
And yet they were already on 82 points, a 50% point share. They, of course, ran it up, 109. Today, they find themselves 15th in the league in points at 63, 16th in points percentage at 553. In fact, they could be bypassed by the Calgary Flames tonight, who play against Washington. If the Flames were to get a regulation win, they would jump over the Canucks, and the Canucks would find themselves below the playoff bar. Calgary and Washington tonight. The push from below continues after the Utahns. Can I call them that?
Sure.
One on Sunday. Utah hosts Chicago. That should be a couple of points for Utah tonight. And the LA Kings beat the Vegas Golden Knights on Monday. They are now 6 up on Vancouver with 2 games in hand. And we spent a good deal of the final week prior to the Four Nations break looking upwards at the Kings and saying they're gettable the way the Canucks were playing. Well, a couple of regulation losses later, and 6 points with 2 games in hand looks like a comfortable margin for the Kings. All the more reason that Vancouver needs the game Wednesday at Crypto.com Arena.
I'll argue they need to sweep this back-to-back. Mm-hmm. Like, they need to go 2-2 in these first 4 games out of the break. Yep. 1-3, and there's no advantage there.
Anaheim is 6 points back of the Canucks with a game in hand, so and they'll play tonight. They'll use that game in hand tonight. So we'll see if Anaheim gets a win here tonight. Even put them in there with Utah in terms of the push from below. 10 days to the trade deadline. As we talked about yesterday, 4 games for the Canucks until then. And our friends at the Daily Face-Off Live they've got you covered. Saravelli's updating the trade board regularly. We're seeing player transactions around the league now. Detroit cleared out some cap space yesterday, dumping Ville Husso's contract on the Ducks, who the Ducks apparently just going to help everybody out in terms of taking on money. So trade deadline day. You're going to want to watch the Daily Face-Off Live. We'll be here as well. There's a rink wide that night after the game against the Minnesota Wild. In fact, you're joining us for the game on trade deadline day, March 7th against the Wild, Rogers Arena.
Oh, I don't know. Am I?
You mentioned we're going to the game with Daniel from Surrey Mitsubishi. You said you were going to come with us.
I'm open. I don't think a ticket's been wrangled just yet.
Oh, okay.
We're working on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hope you make it.
Yeah, so do I.
Okay. The other thing we'll be looking for at Canucks practice today is, well, the first thing we'll be looking for is Quinn Hughes on the ice, full contact, full practice, but also his media, if he does media post-game. I know Drance and IMAC were on the trip, but we have not yet heard from him, of course, since the final Ixnay on the USA. Joining Team USA to at least be support, even if he couldn't play, was rendered. So interested to see what Quinn has to say about that. And you may have caught Matthew Tkachuk. We talked about how Matthew and Brady Tkachuk had sort of broken out from the Four Nations as crossover stars. We're going to get some opportunities for U.S. media shine beyond just the hockey circles. And sure enough, there it was yesterday on The Tonight Show. Matthew Tkachuk guesting on the couch with Jimmy Fallon. It wound up falling just shy of 10 million viewers, Thursday's final, in the United States. It was the most watched NHL game in 30 years. Just under 5 in Canada, peaking at 7.2 in the overtime, reached more than 10 million people. So, yeah, I mean, we were talking last week, Blake, about 15 to 20 million people taking this game in between both countries, and sure enough, it did that.
Does it matter that they lost?
Of course it matters.
No, but in terms of the long-term effects of that.
Yes, of course.
If they had won,
there would have been a USA hockey moment. And I think you could argue the biggest one since 1980 in the Lake Placid Miracle. They haven't won an Olympic gold medal since
But they
then.
still hooked in people, regardless, didn't they?
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that World Cup in 96, and yep, that was a moment for USA hockey, to say the least, but it wasn't the Olympics, and it didn't have the political specter and theater of all of this. Right? That was a preseason tournament, too, as you'll recall. Lastly here, just wanted to shout, Linus Karlsson down with Abbotsford, a 3-point game Sunday. He's got 27 points in 22 games, second in points per game amongst all AHL skaters with more than 15 games played. Maybe he's your throw-in. Maybe somebody thinks Linus Karlsson.
I'm going to ask, I mean, he's a center too. I'm gonna
Is he?
ask Cam Robinson about
All right.
who's next up to help this team.
Greta, fantastic spot for all the games as we get into our menu on today's program. Home, away, your steps from the arena, stadium. We'll have more Canucks Army viewing parties. Looking forward to that. I believe the next one's in April. We'll share notes. The street food menu, there was much eating when we were there Thursday. The poutine is decadent. The smash burger, terrific. And, of course, the arcade that encircles the bar and is most popular. Did you pop a shot? Did I see you popping a shot there?
Basketball?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Weekly drink specials. Greta, 50 West Cordova, the place to be. Let the games begin.
Good nachos, apparently, too.
We will be joined here by Cam Robinson, aforementioned of Elite Prospects. Also, CEO, Sporting Director of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, Axel Schuster, will join in studio. Big week ahead for the Caps. They have the Thursday second leg of CONCACAF Champions League against Deportivo Saprissa of Costa Rica. Then the big MLS home opener Sunday at 2 p.m. against the LA Galaxy, the reigning and defending MLS champions. And your opportunity to see this 22-year-old sensation, Jayden Nelson, off a 4-point game with your own eyes twice this week at BC Place.
Early, heavy schedule is not ideal for a team that's got a couple of injuries, too, and guys getting up to speed like Rios. And
I hear you, but also,
it's games of import early,
well,
at least.
I like to unwrap the new toys.
Yeah.
I like to see you got a new coach, you got a new formation or a new style of play. You've got some new players there.
Emmanuel Sabby's still a couple weeks away, by the way.
Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. Boy, was I wrong yesterday. I had Winnipeg blowing out San Jose. Poor Sharks. That was going to be their Stanley Cup. They led Winnipeg 1-0 into the final minute. Here come the Jets with 2 to win it. Won it in overtime. Winnipeg has trailed in the final minute of its last 2 games and has come back to win both of them. That has never happened before in NHL regular season history. They've won 10 in a row. Today, did you win yesterday?
No, I had the Kings minus 1.5. The Kings scored 4 unanswered goals to win 5-2 at home to the Golden Knights.
So you won.
No, I had the Knights
yeah,
minus.
Knights. You said you had the Kings. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Straight value bet for me today, as we talked about with Jeff yesterday. Anaheim Ducks on a bit of a roll here, 7-2-1 in their last 10, and you're getting value, plus 170 in Buffalo. Also means they'll be primed for the plucking Thursday night against the Canucks, right? It'll be their first game back off the Eastern road trip. That's usually a tough spot to win. But give me the Ducks tonight at plus 170.
I'm chasing the same bet that I made last night. I was trying to help out Canucks fans by asking for a Golden Knights win. Going to do the same here with a Capitals victory over the Flames. Good, but to get any value, I need a multi-goal win here. So Caps minus 1.5 at plus 125.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Cam Robinson coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
You want to know the joy of passing every gas station. You want to know the joy of driving full-time in the HOV lane. But, of course, when you buy a new car, you also want the joy of driving. Take one for a test drive. Go see your Pacific Toyota dealers right now. The BZ4X, the newest installment in the 100% electric Toyota lineup. Check it out. Take one for a test drive. You'll fall in love. and you'll discover that joy of driving. You can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives right now. You can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today, and they're going to incentivize you to put this in your brain a little bit. They got a great contest coming where you could be sitting in the Kanika Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena for the April 6th contest between the Canucks and the Golden Knights, and you'll be wearing 2 brand new Canucks jerseys. Well, you won't be wearing 2. You and the other person will be wearing 1 each. That'd be silly to wear 2.
I mean, you don't need to layer in April. Weather should be a little better.
No, and you're not Joey on Friends wearing all of Chandler's.
Good shout.
Yeah.
Good shout. The lunching.
Yeah. Follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram and Facebook at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. Contest open to BC and Yukon residents age of majority.
Cam Robinson is the director of content for EP Elite Prospects. He joins us. We missed you last week. How you doing, fella?
I'm doing well. Could I be wearing any more jerseys?
Very good.
Very good.
May he rest easy, a Canadian Matthew Perry. That
Yes,
is
he
not
is, yes.
Matt LeBlanc. Okay, buddy. We're starting on Brock Boeser today. It's his 28th birthday. Our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question: what should they do here? Re-sign him, trade him, or keep him as their own rental? That phrase is already annoying enough, and we've got 10 more days of it. What says you?
If it's me, if I'm calling the shots, I'm doing pretty much anything I can to explore every option of extending him. I reported it there a few days ago, is that both sides know exactly what the other one wants, and it's not the same thing at this point. And so, everybody kind of thinks that it's 8x8 is what Brock wants. The Canucks are more interested in maybe, 5 years, maybe 6 years. But, the reps for Boeser, they understand that if he goes to market, it's probably unlikely he's getting $9 million, right? On a 7-year deal, because they can't get that 8th once he hits UFA status. So, is he getting $55 million in free agency? Is he getting 7x8, something like that? In which case, do you look at, is it 7x7.5 with Vancouver? Do you go a little higher on the value and you shorten the term a little bit? I would be working kind of every different angle possible to keep him in Vancouver. He wants to stay in Vancouver. All roads should be led to keeping Quinn Hughes happy, and I think that keeping Brock Boeser keeps Quinn Hughes happy. Now, if you just can't get that done, you got to move him. I don't think that they can realistically look at this lineup, look at how the season has gone, and be like, can we win a round? Can we win 2? This isn't the year to push. That you're not buyers, so don't keep him and mortgage future assets. Now, at the same time, if you kind of sacrifice this playoff run and you do trade a player like Brock, how does that work with Quinn? You have to convince him that the things you're bringing back are going to help immediately. That it's not going to be something you're waiting 4 or 5 years for. But it's a really sticky situation for them. The writing's been on the wall for so long, though, too, right? The fact that Alvin came out there a few weeks ago and just said we're still evaluating this player, a player who's played, however many games as a Canuck and scored so many goals with them. You know what he is. You know what he brings to the team. You know what he brings to the dressing room. Are you willing to pay his freight or not? And if you're not, you move him, because there are teams that are going to be very interested in renting this player and hoping to extend him as well, too, so that you can get yourself a first-round pick, you can get yourself a top prospect, or you can get yourself a young NHLer who's maybe not impacting that contender at the moment right now, but has the potential to for the Canucks long-term. So for my money, it's you try to sign, you can't get it done, you got to move them.
Quite sensible, Cam. I think what I'm hearing from Canucks fans is this is already a weakened team offensively after the JT Miller trade. They're struggling to score goals now. Where are the goals coming from if you're walking away from a player like Boeser or you're trading a player like Boeser?
And that's the big question mark, right? Is that everybody can look at Lekiramäki and be like, hey, he's going to be Brock Boeser next. He'll be the guy who can push for 30 goals or 40 goals, but that's a long-term look. That's not a player that you're sliding into your lineup next year and expecting to push a 30, 35 goal pace. If he does, that's found money, and you would probably like to have that on top of a player like Boeser. So great question that people have is that where are the goals going to come from, especially if Pettersson's not clicking right. You can't rely on Jake DeBrusk to score everything for them. He's got 20-odd goals already so far this year, which has been great for him, but that's just one player. So that's what I mean. I think that all the eggs should go into that basket on signing him, getting it done with the cap rising. If they did 8x8, I don't think it would age all that gracefully. I don't think it would be a great move long term, But in the short term, in the first half of that contract, it would be just fine. And then who knows where the cap goes? Who knows what you can explore down the road? Like I said, all roads keeping Quinn Hughes happy. And I think that if keeping Brock even at 8x8, I mean, I could probably swallow it.
This is a narrow path, but could they not trade for future assets that they flip a la Philip Roenick trade and get what they want? Get a player with term if you can find that player out there, preferably a center. But and maybe you have to extract a prospect from your organization to wriggle free and package with a first round pick or something like that. But is there a path there for the Canucks to kind of improve for this year or at least be stagnant for this year in terms of your quality of lineup and also improve for years to come?
Definitely possible, and we know that this management group has shown that a tendency of doing that, right, is that they flip for futures and then they flip those futures for now assets, and they do it quickly too, right? So if they did move Brock out, days leading up to the deadline, they might have something in their back pocket to buy off of another seller. Or you can do that at the draft too, right? You can do that in the off season, is that you can parlay those picks, especially at the draft. Picks and prospects have a little bit more value. So it's something that they could absolutely look at. And I think that they probably would. And that's probably how they would sell it to the core as well too, right? We lost this player who impacts us now, but we're going to turn him into something, the assets into something that's going to be similar, and we can manage under the cap.
What do you think he's worth at the deadline, Cam? Like, what do you think they could get for Boeser in a trade?
Yeah, so I asked around. I asked a few teams, like, what do and I was asking some teams that probably wouldn't be buying him because they wouldn't tell me a straight answer. But, most people said similar, it'd be like, a first round pick, whether it's 2025 or 2026, and then a legitimate prospect. So someone, a former first round pick, someone who's probably in the American League or just breaking into the NHL, down the middle or on the blue line, the two areas that everybody wants, is that you could reasonably get that this is a guy who scored 40 goals last year. He's missed some time this year, but he's still pacing to push that 30 goal pace as well. People pay for goal scorers. They pay for guys who can show up in the playoffs. He's had a history of doing those things, and he knows how to put the puck in the net. He's still relatively young, and like I said, the team that would buy him would most likely be very interested in extending him too. So to parlay out a pick in the 20s and then a good, strong prospect, that's an affordable cost to pay to get a player now that can help you and then potentially keep around for 5, 6, 7, 8 years too that can continue to help you.
And we've had this conversation with you before, Cam, but you'd be looking at the 26 pick over the 25 pick because of strength of draft pool, or okay, you tell me.
No, yes, absolutely I would. I keep looking at the standings and seeing where that Rangers pick's going to be and how that's going to be an unprotected 26 going to Pittsburgh now, and how badly that's going to hurt Vancouver down the road if they bottom out next year. Yes, you go with that 2026 pick if you have the opportunity to, and like we mentioned before, is that teams recognize that too, right? They are dangling 2025 picks and want to hold on to their 2026 pick, if not even to make it, to sell it next year when it has more value at that deadline too, right? So they don't want to give up those 2026. The fact that Vancouver was so quick to flip that Rangers pick, obviously they like Marcus Pettersson, they extended him right away, should be a good player, but not at a cheap cost moving that pick away. So Pittsburgh did well with that one.
So that's Boeser. Outside of that, I mean, the Canucks really don't have much that they could trade outside of, the rest of their core and a former top four defenseman that they've got in Carson Soucy. So outside of that, they really don't have much. Let's talk Demko and what the Lankinen extension means for his availability. I mean, it seems crazy to think that they would trade an injured goaltender, but could they?
I mean, anything's possible, but what team is trading for Demko right now? What team is looking at his situation being like, that's the guy that can get us over the hump this year, right? So it's a long-term buy on a guy who's got 1 year left on his deal and has this injury concern? You were going to say something, Matt? What did you want to say?
Just your friends in Carolina, maybe?
If you'd been healthy the last 6 weeks and playing consistently and looked like everything was trending upwards, maybe a team like Carolina would be interested.
You wouldn't dare Edmonton, right? You wouldn't dare stare at Thatcher Demco for the rest of his career.
Oh, couldn't stomach it, no. But
I guess what depends on what they're going to pay, right? Is the end of the day. But if it really made a ton of sense, but oh boy, that would be difficult to go against because he's such a competitor. But so the Lankinen extension is. I think it speaks volumes to where the Canucks feel like Demko's going to be. because, this guy's turning 30 years old by the time this extension kicks in. He's never played 40 games in a single season. Yes, he's been above average this year. He's had spells of being above average, but in smaller samples, right? In 30 or fewer games. So giving him 4.5, giving him that term, giving him a no move clause, one of a couple things are going to happen here. Demko's going to find his game. He's going to be healthy. And now what? You have a timeshare? Well, he's not going to like that. Why would he extend? Why would he stick around? Or Demko isn't ever going to be the same. And now you're like, okay, Lankinen's our guy. And are you looking at him and being like, that's a cup contending goaltender? Probably a tough sell at this point. Maybe he proves me wrong. So you either have like a disgruntled Thatcher Demco in the final year of his deal that you're going to have to look to move, or you have this player who really hasn't proven to be a starter long term as your starter in a window where you're like, we got to keep Quinn Hughes happy. So we have to push in. So I don't like either scenario here, but I do think it does speak to where they believe, where Demko is at in his recovery process here and whether he's ever going to be a Vezina level goaltender ever again. And other teams are very wary of that too, right? Just like the market for Pettersson is that teams are still interested in buying Pettersson if Vancouver decided to put him back on the market, but they're leery. Everybody's leery. Does he have an injury? How is he managing it? What's going on in Vancouver? Like all these questions have just been swirling around the Canucks all season, and trading JT Miller hasn't quieted it as enough as I'm sure management would have liked.
We've talked about this before, how the cap has sort of ruined how we evaluate players and how we value them within the organization. Like, without a cap, I think you just say, no, let's give Demko one more summer to get himself straight. Let's give Pettersson one more summer to see if he can get straight. But you don't have those luxuries. A goalie going into his final year, a guy with a no-move clause kicking in. I mean, these are tough decisions here for this organization with guys that have been here for a long time.
Absolutely. And none of them are like, there's no easy answers across the board. And like, if you go one way, like it's still, you're opening up a problem somewhere else too, right? So they've coming off of last year where everything was sunshine and rainbows and the PDO was spiked. It looked like there was this bright future ahead, and just the storm clouds have gathered and they are unrelenting at this point too. I honestly, like, I don't see an easy way out of this for them.
No.
Like the probably the most likely scenario here is that, in 2 years, they don't have Demko, Pettersson, or Quinn Hughes, right? Like, I think that if I'm a betting man, like, I think that is maybe the odds on how this is going to shake out, and it's going to be a complete teardown routine. And, Jim Rutherford's not going to have any interest in doing that at his age. And then are you bringing in another president of hockey operations? If you do, he wants to probably choose his own GM, and that GM wants to choose his own coach. I mean, the coach doesn't even have a contract for next year. There's so many different balls in the air for this team, and everything's kind of dark and ominous. And maybe, sorry to be a little pessimistic on a Tuesday morning, but if I was throwing my coin down, that I think in 2027, that core that was so exciting last summer,
oh man,
isn't here anymore.
Quinn Hughes is Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary, right? Like, that's what it is.
He's usually such a shine bright guy, Cam Robinson. Now, but I would say he's getting ahead of himself, and yet, like a jewel thief, they escaped the last rebuild, right? Like, they were supposed to rebuild somewhere around the way, somewhere down the line. They didn't, and may have to eventually get back to that reality. Just lastly, you mentioned the Pettersson market there, Cam, and your information is that he's off the market. They're not shopping him right now, but with the way he's going, brah, especially after that Four Nations, are you worried about the bottom just falling out of the Pettersson market if they don't move sooner rather than later?
So, because, I reported that, and then the Four Nations happened, and everyone was hoping he was going to wake up and he was going to find his game and have some fun. And so I went back, right? Because there's guys out there, there's some insiders that are out there saying that he still is on the market. And, I've pretty rock solid that teams are calling and they're being told, like, we're not interested in doing anything right now. We moved Miller. We're going to give Pettersson the time. And then one person, when I checked back in, who just said, like, this would be like the worst time to try to trade him. That there is a market, there are still teams calling, but the offers aren't going to be what they were a month ago. Everybody's already sliding back and seeing if they can just, can we get him for a song, similar to what Miller, the market for Miller was for a while there too. And they didn't get a ton for him either. But I did have a couple on their own volition too. No, I didn't cue this up for them. Just wondering aloud to me, talking to some of these sources, being like, would Carolina be interested in flipping Rantanen for Pettersson if Vancouver had a chance to talk to his reps about what an extension could look like, and not reporting this, not saying that Vancouver or Carolina has ever talked about this, but just people on the team side and in the industry wondering aloud, would that make sense for anybody? Would Vancouver be open to being like, here you go, Mikko, here's 8 by 13 and a half. We've got our superstar locked in. Carolina wants a center. They want Elias Pettersson. Would that make sense? He's already locked up if they don't think they can get Mikko signed. But at the same time, I'm told that Carolina is still dead set on extending Rantanen and making, every attempt to keep him around there too. And then let's say Vancouver did pull that off, then they have no centers to pass Rantanen the puck, right? So it doesn't really solve their problem. Sure, they have a superstar in Mikko Rantanen, but they got nobody to dish him the puck. So I don't think that's a great fit.
The Canucks have had success with that, like the West Coast Express, and this is all due respect to Brendan Morrison. He was a very good center, but he wasn't a superstar center. The superstars were on the wings there. So you can do that. We've seen it here before. Let me ask you.
And that team got to the second round Stanley Cup playoffs.
Should have been in the third. Last one.
Minnesota.
A lot of other teams that had point per game or above point per game, 22 and 25-year-old centers respectively, would probably give extended looks given the lack of centers right now on the Vancouver Canucks. I understand, it doesn't intrinsically feel like Linus Karlsson or Ratu is going to help this team right now. But is there a point where that is their option to help down the middle?
I mean, with Ratu, it's like he's a point-a-game guy in the American League. He's been defensively responsible. He's strong. He's good in the dot. This is his last year of being, going up and down freely without waivers. It's like he's done everything they've asked of him. He has to be on the roster next season. He has to be a part of their long-term plan if he's going to be a part of their long-term plan. So, yeah, sure, bring him up and give him opportunities here. But I don't see any of those guys moving the needle for them offensively in a serious way. Could they be 40, 45-point NHLers? Sure. That's what Philip Hedl is too. He's just been doing it for a few years now in the show. So no real needle movers in the organization outside of potentially Lekkerimäki and Tom Wielander.
How do you explain Karlsson's numbers? Why is Karlsson above a point per game? He's amongst the AHL scoring leaders per game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's awesome, but he's 24 years old or 25 years old. And so that just means that maybe he's going to have a 500-game NHL career, because if he wasn't putting up those points, and he'd have no business, because he's not a defensive player, he's an offensive player. But it's just that, and you can also score in ways in the AHL, obviously, that you can't in the NHL. So it's great for him. I'm not trying to besmirch what he's accomplished, but I don't think that that's going to suddenly translate to him being a 60-point player. There. Right? Yeah. That's not just, hey, now when he's 26, he'll put up 50, 60 points in the NHL. Again, anything is possible. I'm not gonna put a ceiling on anybody, but the odds are that is a player that's going to be more of a quad A type of guy. I'm done today. I'm sorry.
The phrase storm clouds. The phrase storm clouds gathering was uttered here with no easy way out.
Yeah, ominous.
Yeah.
A little different than a year ago.
Yeah. Well, we'll be cheerleader next week, Cam Robinson, where we'll be heading into the deadline. And that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Yeah. Thank you for this. Have a great week. Until then.
Cheers, fellas.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So, Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And Canada, it's back. Mm-hmm. He's back, too. But Tim Hortons' Roll Up to Win is back at Tim Hortons, and that means you could win millions of amazing prizes just with the swipe of the thumb. You can turn your routine afternoon coffee run. Matt loves the afternoon coffee run.
Well, midday.
Unforgettable vacations from Sell-Off Vacations, a $1,000 racket and cash prize, all new, all-electric 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz. Even the simple joy of, the free coffee, the free donut. We all love that. But you only have until March 23rd, so get on it. Open up that Tim's app and get rolling. This is your game, Canada. Don't let this chance at millions of prizes pass you by. Play Roll Up to Win on the Tim's app now. Rules apply, Canada only. No purchase necessary, and visit the Tim's app for more details.
It's a huge week at BC Place with Vancouver Whitecaps FC in the second leg of their Champions League against Deportivo Saprissa and our old friend Kendall Waston on Thursday. The home opener against LA Galaxy on Sunday. But before that, we have birthday celebrations for Caps CEO and sporting director Axel Schuster, who is in here a day before his birthday. Good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And it's actually a very good feeling because we have been a little bit on the road. So it's great to be back in Vancouver, even on a rainy day like that. So,
what a magnificent performance on Sunday in Portland against a rival, a team that you knew was going to be a little bit smarting from the playoff defeat you laid at them. And then 4-1, and this kid, Jayden Nelson, Axel, what a debut.
Yeah, no, 100%. It couldn't have been better, honestly, because we were telling everyone throughout the whole off-season that we want to continue where we have landed last year at the end, and that we thought we have been good at the end of the last season. And we had an amazing performance in Portland, and so we go back and have another amazing performance. I think that's a proof that we can continue where we have landed at the end of last year. And then to see that a new signing, a Canadian guy that we were speaking with him since a long time, since almost a year, and we tried to convince him to come to Vancouver to restart his career. And that was also the difference maker between us and other teams then at some point, and that we could convince him to come here, and that he right away can have such a performance, helps him, helps us, and it's only nice.
He feels, well, I saw the criticism a little bit going into the season about his signing, just that, oh, he's washed up. You know, he doesn't have it. And then you look at his birth date, and he just turned 22, and it's like, I don't know that you can be washed up at 22. You know, like you haven't jumped into the shower yet. So, you know, he just he played games as a 17-year-old at TFC. So it's just about development. Sometimes guys get thrown in a little bit too early, don't they? And he needed to develop it a little bit more clearly.
You know what? I actually think that he's now at a great point in his career, and it's probably the point where he really can start to have a career, because he went through some challenges, and this is also needed. You need to get through some challenges. You need to also to learn how to deal with this. He was a very good player in Toronto. We always hated to play against him. He was a threat. We were the better team, but he was the one threat they had. And then he goes for $1 million US to Europe. What was a big deal at that time. And he performed right away very well in Norway. And then, things didn't go his way. They changed the coach. They changed the playing style. He moved to another team, didn't play there. And that's also something you have to learn as a young player. He's younger than all the college picks that we pick up. So, right. And he had already some career, and he had already some challenges. And now it's his time to start that and kick that off.
For those who miss it, describe his game a little, because I was excited watching him on the ball. He looked so comfortable. He looked like an orchestrator on the ball.
And I think he's faster than Fafa.
He is. We know the numbers, but he's faster than Fafa. He is very direct towards the goal. But you saw 3 assists, so he's not selfish at all. He knows also where to play the ball. He has the combination of a lot of things. He's very, very fast, but he also can dribble in tight spaces. I would say he has to grow in certain areas. He also has to grow a little bit in combination play, when to take a risk, when not. But he's very committed to work backwards after he lost the ball. And we have a coach who is known to work with young players, who wants to make players better. And so I think we have a good combination here.
One more question for me on Jayden Nelson. How does he... It was supposed to be Armstrong and Gauld, right? So how does the dynamic change now when it's Nelson and Gauld as opposed to if Stewart had stayed here?
No, we spoke about that we want to add offensive pieces who can give us goals. That's a front three. We play in the 4-3-3. Stuart Armstrong was never planned to play in the 3 up top. In last season, in our best games, this was Goldie, Brian White, and Fafa. And then we had some other choices, but now we have Goldie, Brian White, Ali Ahmed, Jayden Nelson, Sabi, who is unfortunately injured, Daniel Rios. So we have a lot of guys who have good records in scoring and assisting goals. So I think we are good there. The addition for Stewart is still the third player, another player in the midfield.
So that's the guy you're still seeking.
Yes.
How disappointed were you that Armstrong wanted to go back home?
You know what? I'm long enough in the business to not be disappointed about such things. It's just what it is. You know, one thing I learned over all these years is whatever happens, it doesn't matter if it is operational on the trip or is it with a player. it's not worth to spend too much energy in disappointment or such things. You have immediately to think about what's the best next best for us. And so when he told me the first time, okay, I knew there was nothing we can do about that, and it would be completely wrong. And I want to tell that all our supporters, all your listeners, once again, to force him to stay here. Of course, we had a contract, but you want to have a disappointed and unhappy player here, and he will not give you what you're looking into. And so for us, it was very clear. Okay, we don't stop that. We let him go, and we will use the cap, and we will use the dollars, and we will use the open spot to do something different and maybe even better.
So U22s it is to start the season. Would you suspect that you fill those 2 spots before the deadline closes in mid-April?
Thank you for the question, because it's also very important to educate people, and I needed to get educated when I came to the league, and I needed to get educated again when they changed the rules, so it's very complicated. I totally get that.
It's forever educating.
I totally get it. We change the rules. We change the rules. We change the rules once in a while. It's very complicated. So it is. We decided to the U22 road, but the U22 road means that we have one additional U22 spot to the other scenario, what makes it 4, and we add 2 million in GAM, what is cap money, to our cap. So now if you look at that, because a DP also has a 700,000, roughly exactly 700,000 cap charge from the cap, that makes it 2.7 million that you have in the cap compared to the DP scenario, plus a U22 spot. So now you can decide if you want to use all this money for one player, or you can actually bring in, with the remaining what we have, 2 max 10 players. So what is 1.5 million-ish? And we speak about US dollar, and everyone knows what that means. So you can get really good players with that money. So it's sometimes the traditional way to look at it. A DP has a special tag, and that makes him also very special. But I can tell everyone that the average third DP in the league is not making that money. And that's true for us. Andres Kubas, who is a very, very good player for us, probably one of the 2 best that we have right now, and even in the games now again. He's on $1 million. So you get very, very good players for this money. So it's not a U22 road. It's maximizing our flexibility. And our idea is not only to bring in young players. We will bring another young player for sure. That's our part.
By the end of April, you think?
I'm optimistic that we will do this, but we also want to bring in another more experienced player at least, and add everything that we think is needed for our team.
I think people have been reticent of. It didn't work out here, but in the summer, I promise you, we're going to get. They've heard that chorus before. Are you trying to avoid saying that? Like, are you trying to avoid having to kick the can down the road into the summer, because that's happened before, and then you get into the Stuart Armstrong thing where he comes in and really can play 4 or 5 games for you, right? So that's the downside of that. Look,
there's always a scenario A, and I cannot make a 100% promise, because at the end, what we will never do is just sign a player to have a player,
right?
And that the player that then is not working and sitting on our roster, and it's not the right fit. So I would say, from the conversations that we have a scouting and recruitment meeting every day. We have also stocked up this group. We have a lot of people working in this area now, and we had a call this morning with the coaches. After that, another scouting and recruitment call. All of that is led by our technical director, Quinn Thompson. We have a lot of players on our list. And there is not even an A and B; they're all comparable, and I have to say that it's really knocking at doors, because where we are at now, it's not being shy to knock at 100 doors and to see if one door opens, and if because you have to speak with clubs, you have to speak with players, and even if players are up for it, maybe clubs are not up for it in this situation, especially in Europe. Most of the leagues are playing and are coming closer to the end, and this might change over the next 1-2 months, because teams are maybe set. Then they're already relegated, they're already in the Champions League, Europa League, or they're in no man's land and cannot get anywhere, and then the teams are more open to do deals. So we will continue to knock at doors, and I'm pretty optimistic that we will bring in one for sure. I am actually even optimistic to bring in 2.
Are people more curious about MLS these days, like players?
Oh yeah, it's. I just said it yesterday to somebody, and it wasn't an interview. I was speaking with a friend. I think somebody from Europe, and I said, "Look, you know what is the biggest change since I arrived here? calling agents and reaching out to them and say, hey, your player is not right playing there, or he's in the minor league and the bigger league hasn't picked up on him, and would he be open? Yeah, but only if you spend a lot of dollars. You have to pay him for that. Yeah. That's gone. I would say outside of the top 5 leagues, okay, we don't need to speak about them, and I would also understand that the player who's there and close to playing time, that player wouldn't move yet. But other than that, I would say there is a huge openness, and now the calls are absolutely different. Hey, oh yeah, absolutely. MLS would actually interesting for him, and then it's about finding out if he can get a deal done.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about your new coach, Jesper Sorensen, because there's a tie that binds there between yourself and his old boss.
Yeah, I don't know if you would call him his old boss, but yes, I followed him a little bit before. There's a link because Kasper Hjulmand, who was the very successful national team coach of Denmark until summer after the Euro, he was the national team coach, and Jasper was for a time his U21 coach. And so once we spoke about him, and he told me about how good the working relationship is and how good group. And so I followed him a little bit, and I saw that his old club really bought him out from the federation to bring him back. Brøndby, who had the biggest club in Denmark, and that he had an immediate impact. So for me, looking at his profile before I even met him, I thought like he looks super interesting because he looks like a very, very, very good combination of things, because he was a development coach. He worked with young players, something you have to do in this league. Other than a few players, you have to develop the players here, the domestic players, the young players that you bring in, the college players, the draft picks you bring in, but even some of these middle of the pack players that you bring in, you need to make them better, to develop them. And at the same time, with 2 clubs, actually, before he was coaching a second-tier club, and he promoted them right away in his first season there to the Superliga, and then with Brøndby, a club that was far off from where they wanted to be, 10th. Within 1.5 years, he actually almost had the championship, won the championship with them, lost it at the last match day. So somebody who had an immediate impact to teams. So that was the combination that really interested me, and then I learned way more about his character and how he is. And I have to say, he's somebody who has clear ideas about how this team has to play to become better, but at the same time he is a great team player, and he knows that we cannot do anything with a revolution here, and he respects a lot what we have done so far, and he kept every of our staff members. That's also tells you something. So, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Axel, because when Vanny was let go, we thought, boy, he's very much the face and voice of the club on the ground with Vancouverites. Who do you perceive is the face, the voice of the Whitecaps now? Like, whether it's a staunch supporter or a casual Vancouver sports fan, when they think of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, who do you want them to perceive as the face and the voice of the club?
You know, I would first say sometimes it's also easy to hide behind somebody like Wenny, and he was great in that, and I have a good relationship still with him, and I'm very happy about that. We would go for a glass of wine and discuss politics and everything.
He's good at that too. Yeah.
Yeah. We just had the German election, so we have a lot to discuss there. but he was great, and he really helped us with that. But of course, it was also easy to hide behind him, and others didn't step up. And I would like a few of our players stepping up. We have some amazing Canadian talent, national team players. We have outstanding DPs, Ryan Gold, who is, I think, probably the most successful player in the MLS history of this club, and also the most impactful player. It's I think also a step that we have to do to put that on different shoulders, to have more leaders, because to become better, you need also more leaders, more voices in the locker room, on the pitch, outside of the pitch, in the office, publicly. And so it's not always Venny who goes to every interview now. It's also some other guys who have to step up.
That's an excellent answer.
Same formation. It's going to look different for Whitecaps fans, though, isn't it? He plays Sorensen will be a little bit more asking of the ball throughout the course of the match. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We analyzed the last season, and really, I love Rennie, and I cannot say how much I have to say thank you to him for the time, and it was also very successful. But there were also some things last year that haven't been great, and obviously our fans and supporters know that our home performance wasn't great. We were second from bottom in the home performance. So to become a better home team, it's needed that we are becoming better on the ball, and that we find solutions on the ball, that we can also find solutions in the final third if an opponent parks the bus. That's also part of our story of becoming a better team, a team that goes to the playoffs every year, and a team that is more respected. And teams coming here, and they are not coming here to just win the game. They come here with respect, and also a little bit more backing up. And so it's a new job that we have to get done in our home games.
Yeah, I love it. Masters of your own destiny. Don't just rely on the opponent maybe to play a style and counter and get what you get, but actually go out and try and be aggressive and take the game.
No other big stories to talk about, is there?
Well, there is one question, an update on the sale. If there is any update, Axel, what's transpiring since the club announced that Greg and Jeff have put it up for sale?
I think the best update is the season has started successfully. We're here. Nothing has really changed for no one, and we have said that before. The club is here, and everyone in this club is working. And every of our ownership group and everyone we are working with is working on finding the next good owner to continue and even improve this team in our market. And I think our job is, and I can only ask every supporter, every media member, people like you to help us to tell our story. How good this club is, how important this club is also for the community. We are not just a faceless soccer franchise. We are a community club with roots in the community. We do way more than just playing soccer on the weekend in MLS. And that's something that is important to keep in the city, and something that is worth to be interested in, and that people make it important.
Here, no identified buyer. Then nobody has stepped to the fore to become a candidate. And
I said it several times, and I'm happy to tell that also to your listeners again. No one should expect that something happens very quickly. This is a process that takes time. People make their research, and also information have to be shared, and discussions and conversations will go on. Don't be worried that they don't hear anything. It doesn't mean anything negative. We focus on making this club successful and important, and then we will be also successful on that stage.
Having covered some sports franchise sales over the years, including some brokered by Goldman Sachs, usually there's a data room. A would-be buyer goes into the data room, inspects everything. It is an awfully long process, or it sure can be.
Sports fans here have been burned by the Grizzlies. I'm sure you've had that brought up with you. And the last couple of years with the Grizzlies, of course, empty stands made it look like that team should move. How much is attendance a key for this season to ensure that the longevity of this team? Do you guys need to full on call the fans and say, we need you out there?
That was a little bit what I wanted to say. I don't want to make it too of a big thing. We have good attendance. We expect another great crowd, 20-ish plus on the weekend again for the home opener. So we feel the support. But if you like the Whitecaps, and we have a high market awareness, brand awareness, we have seen in the important games we can pull more than 30,000 in the stadium. If there's a time to ramp up behind the team and to make it even more important, then it's now. And the one other thing I really ask everyone in Vancouver, I know it's hard for all of us. I'm now here in Vancouver since many years. Don't think too negative. Everyone in Vancouver likes to think negative. So if something good happens, but everyone expects after that something bad happens. There are good examples. Don't speak too much about the Grizzlies. Speak about the BC Lions, how much the ownership change has positively impacted the franchise.
Well, Thursday against Deportivo Saprissa, 7 p.m. at BC Place, and then Sunday, the big home MLS opener against the defending reigning LA Galaxy. champions of MLS. This Jayden Nelson kid, the Canadian international with 3 assists and a goal on Sunday, well worth the price of admission. Axel, great to see you again. Thank you for making the effort to come on in studio, and have a happy birthday, okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sick Harrison Price rate. Some blackout date supply based on availability. You can text this show, 778-402-9680. Email live at sickharrisonprice.com. All to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Just building off Axel Schuster there, and I've always been impressed at the guy's intellect. This is a smart man, and it comes through even in a second language. But some fantastic answers there, including the one about Vanny being the face and voice of the club on the ground, that, for others it was easy to hide behind him, right? You needed more than just a head coach, particularly given the shelf life of head coaches, right? To be those on-the-ground ambassadors. So, I suspect you will hear from a far broader range of Whitecaps constituents this year as this season goes along. And there are some soccer notes we should mention here. The CONCACAF Nations League preliminary rosters came out yesterday. Sam Adekugbe, Ali Ahmed, Jayden Nelson, Ralph Parisot on the long list for Canada, Brian White on the long list for the United States. We should have mentioned when we were did the Daniel Jebison story yesterday, that Jesse Marsh has promised David and Daniel Jebison to play for Canada, but they're number 2 and 3. He got a midfielder back in August, a Croatian Canadian, Nico Sigur.
Yeah,
so
local kid.
Yeah, so this is terrific stuff from Jesse Marsh and the Canadian men's team, being able to repatriate these Canadians.
European-based Canadians, too.
Exactly.
Like guys playing in good leagues
with good training.
Chops.
Yep. And Canadian Championship this year, meant to get to this last week. TSS Rovers, you may remember last year they became the first League One team to defeat a professional side in the Canadian Championships. That was Valor. They play Valor FC again this year, and the winner is going to take on the Whitecaps, and then it's an all-BC affair with Pacific FC and Vancouver FC May 6th at Starlight. Did you catch this yesterday? NFL Combine in Indianapolis. So flight pulls out of SeaTac. There's a number of Seattle media members on the plane. John Schneider, Coach McDonald are on the plane for the Seahawks, as is Pete Carroll, new Raiders head coach. Pete still lives in Seattle. So they're all on the plane together. And what does Coach Carroll do? He saunters up to first class and starts chit-chatting with Schneider and with McDonald. And of course we're reading into this, right? Because how could you not? There's video of it. Geno Smith wants a new contract. Raiders looking for a quarterback. Who knows? The seeds of a Geno Smith trade might have been planted on the flight from SeaTac.
What's the Seahawk plan then, though? You trade Geno?
I don't know. Draft a quarterback.
Oh, my gosh. And plunk him
in?
Quarterback,
maybe Sam Darnold. I don't know. Just remember that flight if Geno Smith is in silver and black.
Oh, my gosh.
Later this fall. Ex-Lion running back David Mackey is the new executive director of the Canadian Football League Players Association. You know, when he retired earlier this month, the well wishes came far and wide, not just current teammates, but ex-teammates, guys around the CFL, and you know, massive respect there. And now we know why. This is the guy that they've chosen to head up their union. So best of luck to David as he embarks on his second career here with the CFLPA. UBC men's hockey, they hung on. They defeated the McEwen Griffins over the weekend 4-3 in a hard-fought 3-game series, so they're off to Saskatoon and the Canada West semifinal against the University of Saskatchewan Huskies. And want to remind everybody, we are a couple of weeks here away from the basketball final eights, both the men's and the ladies at UBC, March 14th to 16th. The draws are going to come out on March 9th. Quite a story developing in BC men's hoops this year, where number one UVic is 20-0 right now. UBC is 15-5, and number 4, they've had a number 1 versus number 2 on both sides of the straight this year. And the UBC women are 18-2 and ranked number 6th in the country. So
wow.
I suspect you will see both UBC sides as well as some other great BC teams, including these undefeated UVic Vikings. March 14th to 16th.
The last time UBC hosted, me and you went and watched the game.
Yep.
It was fabulous then, and the game is even improved.
We did a show. We did a show from the last time they hosted. And if you'll recall, my friends from Carleton stopped by with a gift.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. That's all right. I was there all weekend because Carleton won. So, anyways, poll question results. That's all they were doing back then, was winning championships. Although the women are the defending, reigning, and number 1 team in the country as well. So maybe they're all weekend again, March 14th to 16th. Poll question results. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results for Monday. When do the Canucks trade Thatcher Demco? The options here were by the deadline, the summer, next season, or keep him. What did the people vote, Blake?
The people voted keep him.
Keep him finished second at 26%. Summer got 40% of the vote to lead all. Deadline got 19%. Next season got 15%. So pretty representative voting.
There's lots of voting.
All four. Ivy says trade Demco by the deadline. Demco needs to change the scenery. Big Joe, you couldn't get a bag of used pucks from him right now. Can't even think about trading him until he has a full season without any major injuries. Not sure you have that flexibility, Big Joe. Skridler, he has next to zero value now. They keep him and hope he can play next season, then trade him if they can. Gord, the draft, there's a decent chance he might ask out. There's a stale and gray, cloudy vibe to the team right now. And Andrew, he's voted for keep him. Tandem goaltending, I think, is the move. 1A, 1B, always fresh, less injury. Also, the cap going up, 2 solid goalies for around $10 million isn't too bad. No, it's not. We discussed that.
He's got reduced value for sure.
Yes,
indeed. He's got reduced value, and you can argue that the goaltending market is a fickle one at the best of times. Mm-hmm. But I think he's a lot closer to his actual value than a guy like Elias Pettersson is.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. There was a few. Al Murdoch was only in Boston for the PA of the Four Nations. Mm-hmm. It's 4 games, not 5, before the trade deadline. And I had read that Jayden Nelson scored his first MLS goal in Portland, but apparently he got one with TFC in 2002. He scored
22,
one goal.
22.
Oh, sorry, 22. He scored 1 goal with TFC for the entire time he was there, but it was an MLS regular season goal. Anything to self-report? Anything from the Great Clips inbox?
Well, I was part of that Montreal-Boston gaff. I bought into that as well. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.